I'm Heidi Parkes, and I'm a quilt artist in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Heidi, what drew you to making art quilts?
My first creative love was ceramics, and I studied that at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And while I was a student there, the Quilts of Gee's Bend came to be known, and I started to take classes in the fiber program. One of the top things that I liked about fibers compared to ceramics was that it was clean. And I continue to love that I can have a home studio and that I don't need a lot of electricity or things from the mine when I'm making my quilts.
Yeah. So how have your quilts and art practice evolved over time?
When I first started making quilts, I was very hesitant to use handwork. I thought that I would make the quilts too expensive and too complicated by spending that much time on them. So I was doing a lot of machine piecing and hand quilting. But the hand quilting was always my favorite part by far. And so when I was visiting Seoul in South Korea in 2015, I got to learn about bojagis and Korean patchwork and the way that the visible hand piecing is an important part of the work. And once I had that in my mind, that I could piece visibly and have people see my handwork instead of it being hidden, that really changed things for me. And now a majority of my quilts are exclusively handwork without anything from the machine anymore.
So can you tell us about your quilt, name it, and tell us about your quilt that was in Quilt National 2025?
My quilt is called Nimble Nimble, and it is a pink quilt that I began with a fabric that was purchased by my friend Takako Wilden when she was in Japan. And I had just recently sold a retreat to go to Japan. I was going to go there for the very first time, and I was about to make this quilt that's behind me at QuiltCon, and I was so excited about that I thought my new diary quilt should be permission to use this pink fabric from Japan and to celebrate that. And it's part of a larger series of mine that I like to think of as diary quilts, where I am documenting things in my life. And so that starting point of enthusiasm for Japan was part of the quilt. It took from August until the following February to make Nimble Nimble. And so it followed me through some moments where I was thinking a lot about my studio space and is it too small? Do I not like that space? And I did an aerial view map of the studio space, and that's the yellow line that goes across the quilt. And then a month after doing that, I got a phone call asking me if I would like to be the artist in residence at the Pfister Hotel in downtown Milwaukee, which is a wonderful art opportunity in my city. And so that's where some of the Victorian energy came into the quilt, with the arm at the bottom that has crazy quilting embroidery, as well as there's a blue there's a lot of little pieces of blue fabric in the quilt, and my paint color that I chose for my studio walls was that blue. And so that's a little bit of how that quilt came to be and the amount of time it took to make.
Yeah, so when you made that quilt, were there some challenges you had to face?
Because things kept changing like I would set a goal and then I would manifest it. I would have a new fancy studio, so it didn't need to be about tidying up my home studio anymore. And I had, at the Pfister Hotel, they have lions there. There are these beautiful sculptures and paintings of lions, and that's their animal. And my animal is the rabbit. And I ordered on Etsy these two little rabbit sculptures to be the mascots for my studio, to fill it with my rabbit energy. And I really wanted to embroider them on the quilt, but there wasn't a good spot left. Like, too much of the prime real estate had already been taken. And so there was a really fun moment when I was actually teaching with my students online in a co-working session with them, where I was puzzling it through, and I said, you know what, I have to just cut a hole in the quilt and relocate these blue dots. They can go anywhere. The rabbits need to be front and center. And so luckily I had more of that pink background fabric. I slid it underneath, and it's almost like a little rabbit hole, like their little warren behind them. And that was, I think, the biggest challenge, was like, how do I fit this new and special story on the quilt?
So what was your reaction at Quilt National when you found out you had won the award for hand quilting?
I was so excited. I had applied to Quilt National previously and not gotten in. That quilt later got Judge's Choice from Mondo Guerrero at QuiltCon, so it was still living its best life.
Yeah.
But when my quilt Mimi was in Quilt National the year before,
Yeah.
I was so excited just to be in the show. I was ecstatic about it. And so to get quilts in Quilt National 2 years in a row was really thrilling for me.
So which aspect of that 2025 quilt are you most proud of?
That summer had been quilting, and I was having some problems with my thyroid ultimately, and it was causing me to have nerve damage both on my foot, and so there's an outline of my foot, as well as on my arm. And when I finally made my way to occupational therapy, I found that I could do this with my arm only till here. And this range of movement was completely inaccessible to me. And over Thanksgiving, I was going to visit my mom in Florida, and I really didn't want to forget to do my occupational therapy homework.
Yeah.
So I traced an outline of my arm, and I only brought white thread with me in my big hoop. I didn't bring anything else. And I committed that I am going to cast a spell in this quilt to regain my range of movement and to get my arm back. And I did, and that was the celebratory crazy quilting arm outstretched, was the hurrah, I can move again. But that spell for my body to be able to do the handwork and the movement that I love is the thing I'm most excited about with that quilt.
So you've won numerous awards for your work. So how does this type of recognition, how is it meaningful for you?
It's really special to be recognized. I'll walk around a show like QuiltCon or Quilt National, and I'll see things and I'll think, maybe that person was a little bit inspired by me. But then I also think, don't have such a big ego, Heidi. There are lots of people who do handwork and are making incredible things. And it's moments like at both of those shows when people walk up to me and say that they were inspired that are really, really special. And then the moments when that's kind of ground up, grassroots acknowledgement. But then when that more top down, when the judges are acknowledging and seeing that I'm doing something special, that like having those both be in balance is so satisfying and so exciting, and it was really special to get that award. And also I just love Judith Martin so much, and she got the award the year before, and it was awesome to be in the same sentence with her.
So speaking of that, the viewer or the student or the person seeing your quilt, how do you hope that viewers, what do you hope that they take away from your quilts, your winning quilts?
Some of my favorite works of art I return to again and again. For example, when I was a student in college, I would go all the time to see the big orange Mark Rothko at the Art Institute. And I would sit on the bench in front of it, and I would think and contemplate and notice the layers of paint and the subtlety of the edge. And for me, his painting became a place to be, and a place to return to, a place where I could discover something new and have some internal dialogue, think deep thoughts. And if my quilt can be a place to be for someone, that is really thrilling and very special for me.
Okay, so what does Quilt National mean to you?
Quilt National is a really roomy, expansive place to be an artist. It is the show that I'm aware of that allows quilters to have unconventional bindings and no batting and strange materials and three-dimensionality and book pages and like that roominess to push the edges of what a quilt can be is one of my very favorite things about that show.
Okay, so Heidi, you are an inspiring teacher and mentor to many. So where can people find you online if they want to find out what you're offering to the world?
If you can remember that there's an E in my last name, K-E-S, you will find me everywhere as Heidi Parkes, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Pinterest. I don't post very often, but even on Blue Sky, I'm there as my name.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Heidi, for sharing your Quilt National story.
Thank you very much for having me.